So I gotta suit up, 'cause you ain't gonna let up, Ain't never gonna let up, never gonna fall.
On April 6, 2018, a bus carrying 26 members of the Humbolt Broncos junior hockey team collided with a semi-trailer in a remote part of Canada. There were only 10 survivors on the bus that day. One of those was Kaleb Dahlgren. The then 21-year-old suffered all kinds of serious injuries in the crash, and his doctors told his parents that he would likely be in a vegetative state the rest of his life. But through intensive rehabilitation and over time, Kaleb has regained most of his function. Although the crash did take away playing hockey the rest of his life. Kaleb has written a book called Crossroads about his experience. But before that fateful day, he was diagnosed as type 1 diabetic at age 4. That's where I started my conversation.
So I was diagnosed at the age of 4 with type 1 diabetes, and really had my world spun upside down as being just a child living a normal life, and then the next day having to have needles and insulin administered through needles to keep me alive. So quite a change of events, and I had to find a positive over negative in that time.
And one of the things, too, Kaleb, we've already told the listeners that you're from Canada, and of course, Canada is hockey crazy, like the U.S. is football crazy down here, and so that was one of the things as you grew up as an only child was this love of hockey, and so not only did you have this diagnosis that you were a type 1 diabetic, but then that also came into play affecting, to a degree early on, who you played hockey for.
Exactly. And one of the big things was, like you said, hockey is super, super important. And being from Saskatchewan, it's definitely the sport. And even in Canada, it's still the sport. And so I definitely had some issues with it. So with coaches, I would get cut from teams or said that it might be too much to handle because of my diabetes. It might be a distraction to my teammates, or I might not feel comfortable with it. So there was definitely some hurdles that I had overcome at that time. And it was the lack of awareness and education at the end of the day. And so I had to educate some of those who are in the authority of power and coaches in general, just that I still can pursue my dreams and passions. I'm no different than anyone else. I just have to make sure I manage my glucose, my blood sugar, and make sure that I'm taking the right nutrients before the game and during the game as well.
I have a son-in-law who has the monitor that is basically attached to his skin.
I do. So it's called a continuous glucose monitoring system. And so I have that as well as insulin pump. And so the insulin pump, it gives me insulin, and I'm able to have the two connect and be like an artificial pancreas.
Yes. And he has the same thing. And my daughter has told me that there are times at night when his alarm goes off, maybe at 3 o'clock in the morning, and he has to go get something to eat at 3 o'clock in the morning. So while I don't have firsthand knowledge of that world, I have secondhand in my family. And so I understand that you are kind of living in that world 24/7, right?
Yeah. And that's exactly it, is that it's not something that just comes and goes or it'll flare up. It's something that's there 24/7. And one of the biggest things that I learned at a young age is that I have to be responsible and also be able to be accountable, because if you don't take care of yourself, it can go bad. And one night I had a seizure because I went too low. And that's the serious effects of having diabetes, especially type 1 diabetes in particular, is the fact that if it's not controlled, then you can have a seizure, you can go into coma, lots of different things that can come from it. And so being able to wake up in the middle of the night and have a snack can help save our life, literally. And it really is something that I'm really grateful for, is the fact that I can feel my glucose levels, I can feel when I'm going low, feel when I'm going high. And some people can't. So one of those things I'm super grateful for.
Going back to early age and the understanding of what your body was going through, one of the things you did as a relatively young person was to recognize that other people needed someone who was in that same diabetic boat they were in that they could maybe look up to. And so you started this group called the Diabetes. Tell us about that.
Yeah, so growing up, I really didn't have a person to look up to or a mentor for my type 1 diabetes, and I felt alone. And being at school, I was the only one with type 1 diabetes, and throughout my career, like I said, I had some coaches questioning me if they were going to put me on a team or let me, or even cut me from the team because of my diabetes. And so with all that going on, I helped one of my friends when I was 16, and he was also 16 at the time, newly diagnosed, and he was like, you need to do this for other people. Like, you really need to give back in that space. And I was like, you know, I definitely could, and I should. And so that kind of ignited my idea, my juices, my creative juices of like, yeah, I need to help children, especially children, because I was one of those children that didn't have anyone to look up to. And I had questions like, what do you do on a weekend out when you go camping with your friends? Do you eat carbs? How do you manage glucose? What do you do in games? What do you do in practices? Are they the same? Are they different? So there's lots of questions I had and have answers too. And so I thought of developing this dream program. And when I was 20 years old, I finally was able to launch it. I joined on to be a provincial ambassador for the Diabetes Foundation here called JDRF. It's in the States as well. And then after that, I was like, all right, now I got my kind of wheels turning. And then I started this dream program when I was 20. And the whole idea is to help type 1 diabetic children feel beautiful for their difference and uplifted, that they can pursue their dreams and passions without diabetes getting in the way. So I have 16 diabetes, and the whole idea about it is an empowerment group and also an educational group. So I'm here as support, as a mentor, and there to be by their side throughout everything. And so I have 16 little ones, but they're all old now. They're not little. The youngest is 8. The oldest is 20. And they are doing amazing things. Some have scholarships right now for school. Some have athletic scholarships. Some are writing books, doing their own programs and helping them with their programs. They're all doing amazing things, and some are just trying to get by day. And I love it because it's so diverse, and it just shows that nobody is the same. And being a support for people can look in different ways. And I'm super grateful to support them, but I say I'm helping them, but they help me twice as much as I ever help them because they're truly changing the world and inspire me every day.
All right, now I got to ask you, even here in Oklahoma, on our Sports Talk network of stations, we carried Game 7 of the NHL Stanley Cup Finals between Edmonton and Florida, and then they lose 2-1 in Game 7. You grew up in Saskatoon, in Saskatchewan, which is in the lower half of Saskatchewan. And it looks like, according to the map, Kaleb, that you're kind of right in the middle between Edmonton, Calgary, and Winnipeg. So which team did you gravitate toward?
So I was Calgary when I was a little kid, and then kind of growing up, I switched a bit to Edmonton. And then today I'm actually at Washington Capitals and Vegas Golden Knights, neither of them. But if I had to choose, it'd be Edmonton, and it was just because it's the closest team to Saskatoon, and we'd go to games there. That was kind of like the spot that we go if we were going to go to a game. So, yeah, Edmonton, and I really wanted them to win the Cup this year. I predicted them to win in January, and I was so close, but congrats to Florida. They crushed it, and they took the first 3 games handily, but it was cool to see the comeback. It was super cool to see that, and it would have been such an amazing thing for sports if it would have happened. But at the same time, it's someone wins, someone loses, and it's just the way the sport is.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Let's venture into April of 2018, because as a junior hockey player, you obviously were very good. A lot of folks around here, or even in this country, don't know a lot about junior hockey and the different levels, but playing for the Humbolt Broncos was quite an honor, and admit that you were playing on a very high level at the time. What was the age group of players on that team in 2018, and how old were you when you played?
So it was a junior A team, and it was we had 17 up to 20, just starting to turn 21 in the following year of that season. And it's similar to the NUL, the NAHL in the States. That'd be like a comparable league to it. And so we had some guys that went from our team to USHL, not that Humboldt team in particular, but that's kind of how it works, so that we either go to USHL. Some don't really, most of the time they don't really go to the NUL because it's the exact same kind of caliber. So that would be like USHL or NUL type of vibe with that.
That particular season, you guys were obviously pretty good. You were in the playoffs. Now you were down 3-1 in the particular series when you were going on the road to go to that game 5. But you were having a pretty good season yourself, right? Leading up to that point.
Yep, I was. I was fortunate enough to be put in a different position, a different situation than I was prior to. And at the start of the season, was a point per game, was in the top 6 role. And prior to that, I was in the shutdown role years before. And so it was really nice to be in those situations. And then after I hurt my wrist, and I said to the coach, I was like, look, I need to go do something different. And I wasn't producing the same as I was. And so I got moved to the third line shutdown role where I was used to, and was able to kind of hone back into that role. And at the end of the day, it was a really great season. I was committed to York University in Toronto for U Sports, which is the top league in Canada for academics and sport. So similar to NCAA Division I, they play against each other all the time in exhibition. You can look up the stats. I don't want to say anything too much, but it would be really good to see U Sport versus NCAA Division I in a conference like North American tournament kind of thing. It'd be super cool. Mm-hmm. But yeah, it's where I was committed to at the time.
Well, and you ended up going there. I know because of the injuries that you had suffered in the crash, you weren't able to play. But I know that you ended up being on the team in some capacity, right?
Mm-hmm. Yep. And I ended up committing in February verbally, and then signed papers in May of 2018, and then was in Toronto at York University in August of 2018.
So I got to see one of your videos. You were speaking at a church somewhere in Canada, retelling your story. This would have been, probably 3 or 4 years ago, actually, at that time. And you said in that delivery to that audience that, the day didn't seem any different than any other day. Sometimes when tragedy strikes, people get a sense that something is happening or could happen, but you said really there wasn't any indication that anything weird was going to happen that day, right?
No, it was just a normal day, and I find that's something that can really be challenging for some people, is that today something tragic can happen, and it does, and that's just the reality of life, and it's sad to hear, and it's tough to know, but it also gives me the idea and mentality to just live life to the fullest every single day. And I had that mentality prior to the crash due to the experience I had before of type 1 diabetes, losing my good friend, also losing a personal trainer, mentor, coach, and then also almost losing my dad. So I had that mindset before, but tragedy can strike at any time, and it could be any second. So to soak up every moment you possibly can.
Walk us through what happened, or the listeners what happened. I've heard you speak about it already. It's an amazing story that you were actually, you can remember what you were doing on your phone, switching songs, when all of a sudden you just blacked out. Yeah.
And so we're on the bus, and I was heading out to Nipawin and had my head down, and others who were playing against, and I was visualizing at that time what my role was. And at the time I was in a shutdown role, so I was visualizing shutting down the top players, and was changing songs, and then lifted my head up, nothing, and then put my head down, closed my eyes, and then boom, everything went black. And then 5 days passed, and then I kind of came to my senses in the hospital. I kind of woke up from a nap at that time, and prior to, I was walking around on the scene right after the crash. I don't remember that. I had my first spawner come out, don't remember that. Transferred to the hospital, don't remember that. And then 5 days of a complete blur that I don't remember, but I was communicating. And I was in a state called post-traumatic amnesia. And then after that, on the 5th day, I kind of came to and realized I thought I was dreaming, and looked around, and then turned out that no, I wasn't dreaming, and that I was in a hospital, and that I didn't break my neck in a game. It was actually a broken neck from a bus crash. And I lost 16 people I consider to be family, and I was one of the 13 survivors.
Yeah, because you told the story about when you came out, you were asking what happened in the game, right?
Yeah, so I was curious what had happened in our game and wondered if we won their game. And I assumed that since I was in a hospital and I had a collar on my neck for my broken neck, I thought I got hit from behind, concussed, had a concussion, and then was in the hospital for my broken neck. And I didn't realize that we were actually in a crash, and that was the scenario.
And you actually went to social media, right, to start looking at all the stories that were posted, and
Yep.
yeah, that had to have
Yeah,
been
so I didn't
alarming.
believe my parents. Yeah, I didn't believe them at all. And then so I woke up and I looked around and thought I was dreaming. So I closed my eyes and then opened them up again and realized I wasn't dreaming, so I couldn't fall back asleep. And then I looked at them and I said, "How did our game go?" And they said, "Caleb, there was no game." And I said, "Well, that's odd. There was no game." And then after that, I was like, "Well, I don't believe you guys." They're like, I said, "Well, what happened?" And I said, "You're a crash." And I said, "I don't believe you." So they said, "Well, here, like, look at your phone." So I looked at my phone, and it was a brand new phone that I never seen before. And then I opened it up, and I clicked Twitter, and I saw hashtag prayers for Humboldt, hashtag sticks out for Humboldt. And that was when it really hit me that this was real. And people were wearing jerseys, and everything was Humboldt, everything I saw. So that was when it all kind of kicked in together.
One of just 13 survivors, 16 people lost their lives in that crash. And I got to ask about your relationship with God and how things may have changed. You know, were there the real struggles of why did I survive going on, you know, behind the scenes that nobody knew about?
Well, I think you always would have that question, and I did have that question for the first night that I found out of the whole situation. So when it first happened that night, I went back, and it was a chaotic day. I went right to physio right after I found out what happened. I got picked up like 30 seconds after, so it was like, didn't even have time to process everything before I got taken to physio. Then I had visitors, and then I actually had like quiet evening, and that was when I was sitting there like, why this? Why me? Didn't make sense. A person behind me passed away, behind him passed away, a person beside me passed away. Like, what doesn't make sense? And started to replay everything through my head, and it was just like, it doesn't add up. And then it wasn't like me getting mad at God. It was more the fact that I just didn't understand, couldn't comprehend it. And then I sat in my bed, and I was like, had this huge text message written out to my best buddy, my roommate. And then I realized that he was sitting behind me, and he was never going to receive that message. And I was just sitting there, and I was like, well, what if roles were reversed? Like, what if he had passed away? What if he was in my bed and I had passed away? How would I want him to live his life? Well, I want to pursue his passions, his dreams, to make the most of it, to take chances, to love deeply, have fun. And I was like, well, since I'm here, why don't I do that? Why don't I make the most of my life? And so it wasn't until like after that mindset shift in that day that everything, I used that as motivation to live my life to the fullest, to help as many people as I could, and to make the most of the situation. And my relationship with God didn't really come into the picture until recently, to be honest. When I was a little child, I told my granny that I want to be a child of God, and she said, "You already are." And I got baptized Catholic, and that was kind of really it. And I said, well, does God love me? She's like, of course. And I was like, well, that's weird. Like, I don't even really know him. And she's like, no, God loves you. And I was like, okay, well, that's nice. And I was like, hello, Jesus. She's like, yes, they both are the same person. They love you. I was like, okay. So that was kind of like my pinnacle of my childhood with it. I went to a public school, and then I went to a Catholic school in high school, and that was kind of my first taste of it again. And it didn't really stick with me until recently. So it was kind of in the last year where I really kind of dove down that path, and now I would say I'm truly a child of God.
Was there somebody or something that happened to push you that direction?
My girlfriend, my partner in crime, she's super into faith, and that's one of her big pillars. And so for me, one of the big goals I had in 2023 was to really grow in my spiritual side. I found that was something that was lacking in me. I felt like I was doing very well physically. I was doing extremely well mentally. Emotionally, I was doing great, but like spiritually, I was missing something. So I started to read more spiritual books. And then I met my girlfriend, and she was heavily into faith, and she is a Christian. And so I was like, okay, like, let's see how this goes. I'm just curious. I want to learn more. I'm open-minded to it. I never was ever against it or anything like that. And then went to a couple of services, and I absolutely loved it. Loved the messages that we were getting. Loved the community that I brought. loved the feeling, and I started to actually get the feeling of like the Holy Spirit. People are like, oh, you've been touched by the Holy Spirit, but I actually felt that. So that was where it really turned for me. Because before I was like, yeah, like let's see what happens. I'm open to it. Then once I was truly open to it, I felt the Holy Spirit, and after that, I was like, this is insane. This is real. It's a real deal. So, yeah, I owe it to my girlfriend and my partner, Megan. She's incredible and led me down that path.
That's awesome. Have you found since then that you've been able to help maybe some of the survivors who maybe even still to this day are having issues moving on with their lives from a spiritual standpoint?
I think one of the big challenges about the whole situation is the fact that nobody heals the same. And everybody heals differently. And that was something that I really learned early on, was that you can only plant seeds. You can't make people grow, or you can't make them drink the water. You can only take them to the water. They have to drink the water themselves. And so I think that's something that I have used now, is just being an example and a representation of it, and living the values and living the life of what it's like, and having them be questioning, how are you living like that? And then that's where I can open it up. Or I've had a couple conversations actually with a few about like faith and religion in particularly, and lots of them were super engaged and curious about myself and like, what do I do? And so that was when I openly shared about that. And everybody has their own opinions, and I think that for me to force on somebody is something that I never want to do. But for me to live it and demonstrate it and be an example is something that I always am happy to do.
I wanted to ask you about the book, Crossroads. I ordered my copy recently. I haven't received it yet, but I'm looking forward to reading the book. It's Crossroads, My Story of Tragedy and Resilience as a Humboldt Bronco. What have you heard from people that have read it so far?
So I started writing it in January of 2020, and I finished it up in December of 2020. I went pedal to the metal, went whole heart into it, and really wanted to put my whole heart on a piece of paper for a tribute, to help other people, and to make a positive impact in this world, and use the negative situation that happened in my life to make something positive in other people's lives. And at the end of the day, that's kind of what happened. A lot of people have said that, have read it, that it's incredible, that it's moved them, that it's changed their life, changed their outlook. It's helped them throughout their tough times. It's given them opportunities to reflect and grow. Some other things, too, is the fact that it really helps people put into context what had happened on April 6, 2018, but also the fact that it's just one of 16 stories. Mm-hmm. It's one of 29 on that bus. And I think that's the beautiful part about it, is the fact that it's just one perspective. It's one person. And there's going to be tons of other ones here coming out, and different ways of showing that. But I believe the beautiful piece about it is that I was able to donate proceeds to charity, and it went to Stars or Ambulance, which is Shock Trauma Air Rescue Service. So every copy went to help give back to that service, which takes people from rural Saskatchewan and takes them, transports them to hospital to get them the care that they need, and that's what we used on April 6, 2018. But they literally save lives every single day. Then on top of that, too, I talk about tough topics. So there's a lot of good things in there, and I find that has been a positive impact for majority, if not every person that's picked up.
That's awesome. That's awesome. So I know that this past April 6th was only the 6th anniversary of the crash, but I wonder, do you do anything different, anything special on April 6th when that day rolls around?
Yeah, I always try to celebrate. I always try to celebrate the lives. I view death on a different kind of scale than maybe some people have. But for me, I find that life can go by an instant, and I celebrate the lives. I celebrate experiences. When you think about there's 8 billion people in this world, the fact that we get to know the people that we know and have those relationships with those people is so special. So for me, it's celebrating those lives, celebrating the ones who are here, the ones who aren't here, and make sure that I do something in their honor for those who aren't here. And that could be either giving a speech, reading a book, just something that one of them would have liked, or something to honor them on that day. And for me, it's celebrating them, maybe going out for a nice meal and saying cheers kind of thing, or who knows what that looks like, other than a meal. But like working out, doing other things, for me, is to connect with them, or even listen to our Broncos music playlist that I was their team DJ for. So have all those songs kind of on a playlist and listening to them to remember them. So I do something every year, and it could be something little, it could be something big, but it's just to honor them.
How can folks follow you, Kaleb, on social media?
The best way is on Instagram or LinkedIn or Twitter, Facebook, whatever it is at Kaleb Dahlgren. Super simple, super easy, at KalebDahlgren. And other than that, they can send an email, and it's the same. It's kd@kalebdahlgren.com. So I try to make it pretty easy, and I want to help. And my whole being is to make this world a better place and to help people reach their best heights. And so for me, that's through speaking, that's through doing a call like this, through the book, through my chiropractic profession, being a chiropractor here. There's so many different ways that I want to give back and help people and have them live their best life.
Well, Kaleb, listen, I wish you only the best. Thank God for you and how you came out of this tragedy, and also for the decision that you've made recently in that relationship with the Lord to really pursue that and to grow that. And I hope that whatever's going to work out with you and your friend, is she a fiance, or is there an official title there or anything?
A girlfriend right now,
okay.
But hopefully fiance in the near future. So
okay, very good. And listen,
yeah.
best of luck to the Oilers next season, right?
Definitely. I think they have a fire underneath their butt. They're going to do well. But thank you so much. I appreciate your call, and thank you for showing the Lord as well in this interview, because it's not normal. And the reason why I accepted it was because I wanted to talk about it and how good God can be for people and how He's helped me. So thank you.
Well, you're welcome. That's the only reason I do these, is for that reason. And I appreciate you taking the time to be a part of Suit Up. My thanks to Kaleb Dahlgren for agreeing to be on this episode of Suit Up. We certainly pray for Kaleb and his family as he continues to live his life for God.
So I gotta suit up, 'cause you ain't gonna let up.